This is Professor Susan Gillis. This video focuses on the plausibility test. When do we apply the plausibility test? Remember, Federal Rule 8a requires three things in a complaint: a statement of subject matter jurisdiction, a statement of the claim, and a demand for relief. The defendant can use a motion to dismiss to attack a complaint. The plausibility test is triggered when the defendant argues that the complaint has failed to state a claim. When we attack a complaint for failing to state a claim, the first thing to do is work out what claim the plaintiff is trying to state. Then, the issue raised by the plausibility test is whether the complaint has enough factual detail to show the pleader is entitled to relief on that claim. The old test for whether there were sufficient facts, sufficient details in the complaint was the notice era test from the Supreme Court case in Conley. However, since 2007, we have instead applied the plausibility test. Let's take a look at the old test because it helps you understand the new test. Under the notice era test, the theory behind a pleading was that the pleading simply had to give enough detail, enough facts to put the defendant on notice, so the defendant knew what he was being sued about. The only role for pleadings, therefore, is to give notice to the defendant. Finding more facts belonged to a later stage, discovery. Getting rid of frivolous claims belonged to a summary judgment motion. The only thing we wanted pleadings to do was to have enough facts to give notice. Because of this, the test during the notice era was very easy for the plaintiff to meet. We looked at the complaint and we presumed all the alleged facts were true. We also presumed that any allegations or conclusions were true. And then we simply asked, was it possible, based on conclusions and facts, that plaintiff could recover? As long as it was possible that plaintiff would recover, then we said plaintiff had met 8A2's statement and had stated a claim. Here's a famous quote from Conley describing the possibly standard. Conley's case said that a complaint should not be dismissed unless it appeared beyond doubt that plaintiff could prove no set of facts in support of his claim that would entitle him to relief. In other words, if there were sufficient facts in the complaint that a court looking at it could say, well, plaintiff could possibly win on that because in discovery they could get more information, then plaintiff had enough facts, the complaint was factually sufficient. It's a very low standard for the plaintiff. As long as the court thought plaintiff could possibly recover, 8A2 was met. Let's look at it in a diagram. Maybe this will help. Under the notice era, you looked at the words in the complaint, you assumed everything was true, both factual allegations and conclusions, and then you simply asked if the complaint possibly suggested plaintiff was entitled to relief. An example. Let's presume plaintiff is trying to prove false imprisonment. Here are the elements of that tort. Defendant acted with the intent to confine, and that the defendant action resulted in the confinement of plaintiff. Suppose this is all the plaintiff put in their complaint. On January 1st, 2012, at 3 Main Street, Columbus, Ohio, Dan acted to imprison plaintiff Pam, and as a result, Pam was imprisoned for a significant amount of time. Is this factually sufficient? Under the notice era, the answer would be yes. Even though it's very conclusory, in the notice era we would say that it did state a claim, it had sufficient facts. Why? Remember, we presume both facts like January 1st, 2012 are true. We also presume that any general allegations or conclusions, like Pam was imprisoned for a significant amount of time, those are presumed to be true, and we simply ask, could the plaintiff possibly recover? And our answer would be yes. If Pam can find proof that Dan acted with intent and imprisoned her, she could recover. So therefore, under the notice standard, this complaint would be factually sufficient. The question is, in the plausibility era, is it enough? What the plausibility era demands is more factual detail about the claim. Let's look at how the theory and the rules have changed. First, the theory. In the plausibility era, the court demands that pleadings do more. Not only should they give notice to the defendant, but pleadings should also serve to weed out implausible claims. So we expect the pleading stage to have more factual detail so that we can get rid of implausible claims. If you look at the test adopted in the plausibility era, you'll see that it demands more factual information. Why? First, the court distinguished between facts and conclusions or general allegations. The court told us that while we should always presume alleged facts are true, we should simply ignore general allegations or conclusions. The pleader can't rely on general conclusions. Rather, we're going to force the plaintiff to come up with detailed facts. Secondly, instead of simply asking if the plaintiff could possibly recover, now we're going to heighten the standard and ask if plaintiff can plausibly recover. What does this mean? It's very important as you read the cases to try and work out what the court means by plausibly. Look out for descriptions of this new standard. What we do know is that it's meant to be a higher standard. If the notice standard simply required proof that plaintiff possibly, conceivably could recover, now we're asking for more facts, enough factual detail that we can say the plaintiff is plausibly going to recover. One way to think about these words is to remember 8A2's command. 8A2 says the complaint has to have a short and plain statement of the claim showing the pleader is entitled to relief. One way to think about the standard is that under the Conley notice era, the court simply said, does the statement of claim show the pleader is possibly entitled to relief? But now the court is saying, does the statement of the claim show the pleader is plausibly entitled to relief? A higher standard. Again, as you read the cases, look out for statements about what plausibly means. If you want to look at it as a diagram, here it is. Once again, we look at the words in the complaint, but now we're going to ignore conclusions. Plaintiff is not entitled to rely on them. Any facts in the complaint we're going to presume are true. And then we're going to ask if the facts, presumed as true, plausibly suggest plaintiff is entitled to relief. Let's try and apply the standard to our favorite false imprisonment case. Once again, this is the tort that plaintiff is trying to allege. This is the claim they're trying to make, and here's what they wrote in their complaint. Are there enough facts in the plausibility era? Here's what's tough about the test. The first thing we'd have to do is look at the complaint and work out what's fact, what are legal conclusions or bare assertions. Now, January 1st, 2012, the address, they're facts. How about Dan acted with the intent to imprison Pam? Is that a statement of fact? So we should presume it's true? Or is it simply a bare assertion, a legal conclusion, to which we can give no credit when we ask if there's sufficient facts? This issue, what are facts and what are conclusions, is a tough issue, and you're going to have to look at the cases to see if you can work out how the court is distinguishing between facts and legal conclusions. Once we've worked out what in the complaint counts as facts that are proved as true, remember we now ask, do these facts suggest that plaintiff is plausibly entitled to relief? Not just possibly Plam could recover, but it's plausible to suggest she can.